Welcome, everyone. Are we on? Are we on? Let's see. We are. Welcome in Jim Mahfood. Jim Mahfood, a dynamic force in the comic book industry for over 2 decades, has carved a unique niche with his vibrant and unconventional style. From his creator-owned titles to his memorable collaborations, Jim's contributions have been both influential and transformative. In the early 2000s, Jim's epitomized the hustle and spirit of the independent book scene. Is one of my favorite parts of your story. His journey was marked by relentless creativity and a DIY ethic that fueled his rise. In the realm of creator-owned work, Jim's Girl Scout stands out as a defining series, showcasing his bold art and storytelling prowess. This series has cemented his reputation as a trailblazer in the independent comic scene, earning him a dedicated fan base. His contributions in recent years includes his work on the animated Spiderverse films, tasked with the concept designs for some of the characters, and Mahfood has brought his distinctive flair to the project. His journey through the comic book industry is a testament to his creativity, resilience, and impact. From his original works to his collaborations, I feel like I've already said that. And everyone, please show your love in the chat and push all the buttons down at the bottom there to welcome Jim Mahfood. Thank you for joining us, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for that fantastic intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I've been a fan for a long time, since I had to go back and I was like, yeah, you are the guy from MySpace. I was following you on MySpace, I believe.
MySpace.
When you were doing when you're doing a lot of live art events and more in the fine art world, I was following you. I do have a question that's not part of all of this, but did you ever have, and I tried to look for it. Oh man, I searched. And did you have a write-up in Juxtapose magazine? Did they interview you at some point? I had a subscription to that.
Yeah, I had like affiliations with them and like kind of the lowbrow art scene when I lived in LA for like 16 years. And I did some events with them and like live art, and was always at galleries in LA that kind of like worked with Juxtapose. And so all of us sort of knew each other.
Yeah. I love that LA, the heavyweight. Live at the barbecue. They had like DJs show up. They had artwork. I saw them at Bonnaroo painting all the walls at Bonnaroo by themselves. That was early 2000s, 2001 or something like that. And I was introduced to that whole world of live art. And the young artist in me was like, I feel like I got to do that a little bit, So I got a chance here in Austin. We have quite the live music scene here. So for sure. I got to do a little bit of that, and you were definitely an inspiration among many others. I'm sure that you're all longtime friends with, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, super fun, man. Super fun to paint in front of people while DJs are rocking out, and it's just a different way to make art. I mean, it's completely. For me, it was always on the fly. It was like unplanned. It was just get a big sheet of plywood or a big canvas and just kind of go nuts and respond off what the DJs are doing, what the crowd is doing. And it's kind of the opposite of sitting and doing comics alone in a studio, because comics is like very planned and reflective, and you're concentrating on storytelling and penciling and the inking. It's very craft orientated, and the live art thing was more like, this is just completely freestyling in the moment,
And people really love to see the process. They just love to see the handwork and what you're doing, and no matter what it is, they'll sit there, and I think they're mesmerized by just the live action of it being right there. Because I mean, you are in your studio, you're in a private studio working on comics, and nobody's over your shoulder. Well, I don't know if anybody's looking over your shoulder, but I would only imagine that it's very you're in solitude when you're working on that. But being around some drunk socialites and trying to do artwork is a totally different gig. So, uh,
Completely.
so, so yeah. Speaking of early on, Jim, your DIY approach to comic book production underscored your commitment to artistic freedom and innovation, and your journey in the comic book industry spans over a few decades here, with some incredible highlights. Can you tell us define a moment early in your career that made you realize that you were on the right path uh, with this kind of cool indie comics? I don't even know if they were called labeled indie comics yet, but like your 40-ounce stuff,
Hmm.
and they reminded me of zines. What we passed around as zines back in the day as well. They're kind of that go to Kinko's or
Yeah.
go to the local place, run them off, staple them up together, and I feel like I need one of those if
Yeah.
they're still around.
That's it. Well, I mean, no,
For
I
my
mean,
collection.
you're totally right. I mean, that's exactly what it was. Like we were literally going to Kinko's, and I started doing that in high school when I was in St. Louis. I was hanging out with these guys that had a independent comic book company called Artline Studios,
Mhm.
and they kind of showed me the ropes of how comics were made, because this was in the early 90s and there was no internet or information on how this was done. So I met these dudes that were like 10 years older than me that kind of hired me as like their office assistant, and they showed me like, here's how comics are made. Here's the Bristol board you use. Here's the inking tools. And then we're going to go to Kinko's, and here's how you make your own zines and mini comics that you can have at your table at conventions. And then I went away to art school, and in art school in college, I started self-publishing my own indie comics. That's where Girl
Mhm.
Scout started.
Mhm.
And the breakthrough moment that you asked about for me was I did two self-published Girl Scouts books, and then I did this book called Cosmic Toast, and it was just an anthology
Mhm.
of my own comics. And I brought that book to a convention in St. Louis, and everyone was responding in such a positive way to it that it was kind of like, to me, it was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to
Mhm.
do my own stuff with my own voice and my own style. And
Yeah.
ironically, one of the X-Men writers, Scott Lobdell, was at that show and took that book back to New York with him and showed it
Yeah.
around the X-Men offices. And that's how I got my big break doing the Generation X Underground special for Marvel. And then that book led me to getting hired by Kevin Smith and the Oni guys to do Clerks.
For the clerks. Yeah.
So Cosmic Toast led to Gen X Underground, led to Clerks, and then boom, that was the beginning of my professional full-time art career. Like I never had a day job after that. It was just full. I'm a freelance artist now,
Do you,
so
do you ever have any fans come around and ask you to sign any of those old
yeah.
self-made books? You do?
Yeah,
You still have? You think Jeff still has his copy that he passed around the office?
probably. And it's funny you asked that, because I literally just signed all of those books a couple weeks ago at Heroes Con. Like
Oh, that's so great.
even
Yeah.
someone found Cosmic Toast online, and there's only like 300 of those printed
Hmm.
in the world from 1996. So if you have that book, it's a rare book.
It reminds me a lot of Sam Keith's "I Before E" rule. Like it was like almost like a urban legend that self-made comic book out there by Sam Keith
Oh
was
yeah. Yeah.
existed. That when I started reading about him, that was the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
So, how about that hustle? Can you share some of the insights of the hustle that you naturally were just driven to put your name out there? Was that a taught thing? Did somebody say, "Hey, Jim, you've got to get out there your own. Nobody's going to come to you," or what was it that inspired you with your hustle? Because I've heard it multiple times watching some videos on YouTube as you're a guest or somebody introduced you. They talk about Jim is always hustling, no matter where he is. You see him at a con. Oh, I got to go. I got some more stuff to hand out, or I've got to go over here and talk to so and so about this and that. So, was there anybody that told you to do that, or was that a natural instinct for you to be kind of have that business driven?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I come from a family of like really hardworking people. Like no one in my family is lazy, and my dad from an early age always instilled in us this work ethic and a sense of like pride in your work and discipline. And I just kind of took that and focused it into this art path, which he didn't really know anything about, but he was kind of like, okay, if this is the path you want to explore, you want to go down, you know, go for it and fully do it and learn how to like market yourself, put your name out there, make business cards, you know. So him and my mom were very, they didn't understand the comics world, but once they saw how determined I was to do this as a career, they supported that. So, and then also, man, when I got to art school in the 90s, in the early and mid 90s, everyone was just, everyone I was around was like throwing their own parties and DJ events and publishing their own comics and zines. And you didn't really wait around for anyone to give you permission, or you didn't really wait for corporations. It was the DIY era. And everyone was like, well, screw it. I'm just going to make my own thing. I'm just going to publish a book of poetry or make my comic, and then we would throw our own like DJ events and parties, and then everyone would be selling or trading their zines with each other at the parties. And then that kind of directly led me into, well, the comics version of that is basically like the black and white indie scene of comics, you know? And so one thing just kind of led to another, and it all made sense to me. But through my whole life and my whole career, I've always found it to be very, very exciting that this is my job. So the hustling and promotion part of it is like part of the fun or part of the excitement of being like, hey, you guys, check out my new thing I'm making. Like, I'm excited about it. Maybe you'll be excited about it. Like, you know, it's the idea of like community and sharing enthusiasm, because it is a lot of hours on your own making the actual thing. And so the fun social part of it is going to conventions and going out and actually promoting and pimping what you're doing. So I've always enjoyed the balance of both, like do a convention, be social, stand on your feet for 3 days, shake every hand, sign every comic, promote your stuff, and then go home and be alone for a week and make new stuff that you can then go out and promote in 6 months or whatever.
Yeah. You ever have a desire to bring back those type of parties? I mean, I know that you don't really have to hand out zines to anybody anymore, but you know, kind of an open invite for the who's who of DIY independent comics at home comics right now. That would be an event.
I do.
That would be awesome.
I do want to do that, Adrian, but I don't want to be the one that has to organize the party. And because, dude, I did that for like 15 years. Like we did our big San Diego Comic-Con live art party every year. And it was me from LA, like organizing the DJs in San Diego, finding a club that would allow us to do that, going to Home Depot and buying all the boards and live art supplies. And the other artists, all great guys, friends of mine, they would just walk into the club that night and drink and paint and have a blast. But they didn't realize that like the amount of organization it takes to pull these parties off is like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot.
Yeah. Get yourself an intern.
I need, if anyone out
it's
there
time
wants to organize the next party.
Yeah.
Contact
Put a
me.
shout out. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, I would love to be there. I would fly out for that one just to make that party. If you did that, that would be awesome. So you mentioned your support from your parents when you were younger. And just recently I heard you mention a story about how you were lucky enough to land a job at a con merch table. I believe it was for Jim Lee or someone else. And then Jim Lee kind of stole you around. So there was some heavy hitters there. And then you ended up, I love the story about how you faced off with Jim Lee. I forget the name of the game, but there was some video game that you found yourself playing some video games with Jim Lee, and they asked you to come on the road with them to the next con or next couple of cons. You went home, asked your parents, and they said, absolutely. You said, can I drop out of the 11th grade
Yes.
for a few months and then come back and do this con with these heavy hitters? And your mother or your parents decided to say no, not give you that permission. How different do you think your comic book career would have been today if you would have been allowed to travel from con to con on the road with Jim Lee and company? What do you think? What do you think would have? Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I don't know. This was 92, and yeah, I told this story on Cartoonist Kayfabe. That's funny. You brought it up.
Yeah.
But
I just watched it.
It was such a random thing because Artline Studio, the guys in St. Louis that I was with, our table just so happened to be next to Jim Lee's merch table at Chicago Comic-Con before it became Chicago Wizard World. And Jim and his whole crew, Wills Portasio, Scott Williams, like all the artists were off at a different section signing. But he had a buddy of his running a merch table, and the buddy asked me to jump up and assist with selling T-shirts and prints and stuff. So long story short, they liked my hustle and my work ethic, and they asked me, like, do you want to go for another like 3 or 4 shows with us and work the merch booth? And I brought this up to my folks, and like you said, my folks were like, it's not even an art related job. It's just you selling T-shirts. Like, this isn't gonna. But I was also, 92, I was like a junior in high school, so they were like, no, you're not taking 4 weeks off of school to. But I career wise, I don't think much would have came from it, because at that same convention, we were already bugging Jim and all them to like look at our samples and look at our work. And he looked at our work and was like, you guys are good. You're self-publishing your own comics. Do that. But he's like, it wasn't like Marvel or DC professional level work at that time. And I think when you're young, you're so hungry and ready to break in that you don't want to hear that. You're like, look, we're publishing our own comics. We're pros. Like, why are we not drawing like X Factor for Marvel? And the guys that are drawing X Factor are like, whoa. Like, you're not quite there yet. Like, just keep doing the indie thing, keep paying your dues, sharpen your skills. And at the time, I was like 16 or 17. So they're like, you're good for 17, but you're not like, let's see where you're at when you're 20, when you're 21. So there is kind of like a pecking order of how you proceed up the ladder with some of this stuff. The joy of doing your own stuff and being indie is you don't have to worry about any of that. You just make your cool comic and put it out into the world. And if people respond to it and you create a fan base around that, then you're off and running. And that's entirely exciting and fantastic. And then if you keep going, hopefully you just improve and learn over time.
Do you is that why you stick with more independent titles than the more popular ones, because you can kind of do your own thing? Do you think that if you started doing Spider-Man today, they would ask you to tone back the Jim Mahfood style and kind of come a little more conventional? Or have you made it into a list of people, like, if you get like I mentioned, Sam Keith, if you ask Sam Keith to come in and do the line work for a comic, you get Sam Keith. You don't get him to tame up or shape his body's different, or that type of stuff. Do you think that that's why you've stuck with more independent titles and more self stuff?
Yeah. And also I wouldn't be able to maintain like a monthly schedule for Marvel or DC. Like, that just doesn't really interest me. Like a mini series or a one shot, if it was the deadline schedule on that was worked out in advance where I had time to do something like that, of course I would jump at that. If it was like a Batman thing at DC or Spider-Man at Marvel, like, of course. But I learned early on that I was not set up to produce like monthly comics. So writing and drawing my own material, it might take me like a full year to do just like 5 issues or whatever. But that's making it on my schedule and also doing other freelance work on top of
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
I do comics, but I'm also doing like lots of variant covers for other publishers. I do private commission pieces for people. I travel and do conventions, and I also work kind of like in the freelance illustration world. I've been doing lots of stuff for Epic Games over the last couple of years on their Fortnite video game,
Fortnite stuff, yeah.
loading screens for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of enjoy the freedom and variety of not being committed to just like one publisher or one project at a time.
Is that the happiest? Is now the happiest you've ever been? You're the most comfortable that you've ever been in your career? Like,
Yeah.
because you kind of look at that, you're like, oh, I don't want to draw Wolverine for 100 issues. I
Yeah.
just want, I want to stick with commissions and the con tables and variants and stuff like that. I feel like you've
Yeah.
found a nice balance as an illustrator
Yeah.
to work a little bit, have your hands in a little bit of different industries almost.
Yeah. It's, and I look at it as like, I make a living making badass images for various people. So, I mean, that's kind of like the thing is like, I'm an image maker or illustrator in a way where whether it's a comic or a cover or a loading screen or some character designs for an animated project, I get to make imagery, and that's how I make my living. And to me, it's super exciting to still be able to do that every day. The novelty hasn't worn off on me, man. It's like,
Yeah.
I still feel good being in the studio every day.
Yeah. If there was a title that you could work on, if one of the bigs called you up and said, we want you to do 20 issues of this one storyline, what character, would you be happy with doing a whole bunch of drawing of?
Well,
If they said, Jim, you can bring your own style, you can do whatever you wanted, and you do you.
Yeah.
What would you like to?
It is very simple. It's like, it would be Spidey at Marvel and Batman at DC.
Yeah.
Like those are two of my still favorite,
Yeah.
like go-to, iconic, super fun to draw. And both characters are open to artistic interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a character like Superman, it's a little bit more difficult to get
gotta be
super weird with him. But with Batman and Spidey, it's like you can push those characters stylistically, and I think people will still be along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at Spiderverse, man. Those animated movies, they really kind of push the boundaries of what you can do conceptually and stylistically, and people really responded to it because it was something fresh and new.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you just mentioned the Spiderverse. How was that call when they said that they needed some concepts from you, some concept sketches? Was that something that you wanted to be more involved with, or you're like, I'm fine with just a couple of concepts and then I'm out? Was there a moment where you're like, oh, I wish I was had a bigger name on the screen, or I was more involved for both of those films?
Yeah, with the first movie, I knew a producer on the first movie, and he hit me up early in 2015.
Oh wow!
And hired me to start making just like production art, and he didn't even tell me about Miles being part of it. He was like, we want to hire you to just start making some like Spider-Man related production art for this animated feature we're doing. What would Spider-Man look like in our movie according to you? Like, do your weird bugged out stuff. And that led to them specifically asking me, can you do character design passes on Peter Parker, Miles, and Gwen? And I was like, oh, the movie is Miles. Okay. And then we're getting into like 2016, 2017. And they liked those three characters. And then they hired me back on to do character passes on basically the entire cast, all the villains, except Miles's like mom and dad and stuff. But so what happens with a huge production like that is they hire me and then probably like 20 or 30 other guys and girls, and they get all of our crazy concepts, and then they just start Frankensteining all those designs together into the final master design of each character. So to even be part of the first movie and to have my art in like the coffee table art book for the first movie. There's some of my designs in that.
Okay.
To me, man, that was like a huge honor because I didn't know really what the movie was going to be until it was completely finished. I started seeing things, and then I saw the finished movie and was like, oh, this is way beyond what I thought it was going to be. This is incredible.
It was
So they pushed the envelope so hard that it was so refreshing. And I think it worked because, like I said, Spider-Man and Miles and that whole world can be tweaked stylistically and people still respond, you know. And it was just great. It was just so good.
Yeah. And I think it's just going to keep getting better and better. But that's awesome that you were part of getting the ball rolling and all that. If I wasn't asked to do this and we weren't connected to do this interview, I would have never known. I don't think I would have dug that much. Or maybe years later, I would have opened that coffee table book at a Barnes and Nobles or something and saw your work in there, not knowing. But I felt like back in the back of my mind, that I was like, that's Jim Mahfood doing halftones like Jim Mahfood does.
Right.
And that leg, the way he's got the leg all kicked out and uncomfortable. It's, that's a Jim Mahfood pose right there. And I started just seeing that. And it's funny that I noticed that. And then, years later, I find out that, you were the beginning kind of it, doing the concepts.
It was super fun. And the vibe of my work is in those two movies, but it's also like so many other artists are in there too, that like not one artist can really claim dominance over everything. The producers and art directors of that movie are brilliant in that they just pulled all these fantastic, unique resources together to make something super special. And I didn't technically work on the second movie, but they were cool enough to give me a shout out in the art book for the second movie in the Spider-Punk section. They were like, we want to give a shout out to Jim Mahfood and Ashley Wood because the world of Spider-Punk is like super influenced by those two guys' style and aesthetic. So they've been good to me, man, where it's like, I didn't even work on that movie and they're still giving me a shout out. So I appreciate those guys.
They knew what they took from you. They knew what they took from you.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, we're coming up on time here in a few minutes, but looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of your career in the comic book industry and beyond? Do you have any, are there any new artistic directions that you're kind of working on? Or are there any kind of other mediums that you want to explore here in the near future or in the distant future?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I am working on a brand new project right now. I'm doing a new creator-owned comic book project that I'm going to kickstart. So I'm going to try the crowdfunding thing, which I've only done once before, and it was for a really badass pop-up book that a buddy of mine and I made. But this will be my first foray into creator-owned comic book project. So stay tuned to like my social media, and people can subscribe to my newsletter at jimmahfood.com to stay up on that. I will be announcing that sooner than later. And then also, man, I just launched recently a new YouTube show called Ink Pulp Live with my buddy Sean Crystal, where twice a month we get on YouTube on his show. We draw live. We have a live chat. We auction off those drawings during the show, but we also talk comics, talk craft, show what techniques and what tools we're using, promote comics, promote other people's comics, and we welcome aspiring artists into our chat to promote and pimp their books, their Kickstarters. So basically, man, what we're trying to do and what I'm learning more about the future we're going into is you have to create a community around all this stuff. You can't just be like isolated alone. Like, I'm just going to put stuff out and see if people respond. You have to have like a community and people supporting one another, and one thing feeds into the other. And then we all make this cool thing together and move it forward together. Because I feel like comics is such a niche art form, and
Mhm.
those of us that are passionate about it, we don't want to see it go away, obviously, and it's not going to go away. It might get a little smaller or grow in size or get bigger, get smaller, whatever, but the community aspect of it and the sharing aspect of it is something I'm becoming more conscious of as time
Mhm.
goes by.
Mhm.
So those are the things that I'm doing. And like I said, I'll be announcing the Kickstarter sooner than later.
That's so
So
great. And with this new title, are we going to see crossovers of some of your other? Is that ever going to be a thing? Like the girls from Girl Scouts comes into the new title or anything like that?
not on this one because it's its own
No.
self-contained new
Okay.
idea, but I will say next year is the 30th anniversary of the very first Girl Scouts comic I self-published, and I am
Is it
doing.
this one? This one,
That's the
or is it another?
1998 Oni one.
Okay.
There's a
All right.
95 one I did in
Okay.
art school.
Uh,
So I'm counting that as the official first one ever, which means 2025. It's insane to say this. It's the 30th
yeah.
anniversary. So I'm doing something with Image Comics next year to celebrate the 30th anniversary
Yeah.
of Girl Scouts.
Yeah. Nice. All excited.
So pretty
Nice.
exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I mean, it was my last question was going to be that fans are always eager to know what's next for their favorite artists. I think you just answered it right there. You got the Kickstarter coming out. I heard a little something on a YouTube that you have something in the works with Scotty Young. Is that
Yeah.
still going on? Is that something
Yes.
you can announce right here on
Yeah.
the Gen X Virtual Con?
That's also too early to announce, but I'm living in the same city as him now. So I just saw him
Oh,
2 days
nice.
ago for lunch.
Neighbors.
So yeah,
Neighbors with Scotty Young.
I just show up
Nice.
at his studio and harass him and see what he's working on.
Just looking over his shoulder. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. But I've been friends with that
He's
dude for a long time, and it's cool to be around like someone who's so successful and is also like a total hustler and hard worker,
yeah. Oh man, one of the best. People have shows just selling his stuff, hundreds and hundreds of covers that
Yeah,
he's done, like on Whatnot and other platforms and stuff. So
it's
yeah,
amazing.
he's gonna put you to work. You hanging out at his house
Yeah,
too much.
yes, I know.
You're gonna start inking stuff.
Yeah, we're
Um,
figuring things out as we hang out. So we'll see.
well, Jim, where can people find you? JimMahfood.com. Yes.
Yes, and all my social, Instagram, Twitter is all just under my name at Jim Mahfood. I'm very easy to find, and you can order signed and remarked books and prints through my store on my website as well.
There's a booth here on the Air Meet within the virtual con that you have. So hopefully there's some links on there too. Over 50 different books to choose from on your website alone. It's hard for me to go through there. There's Ballpoint Slayer is the latest one, which is amazing. I need for my bookshelves here. Yeah, show the people that one. That's just an art book of your work. Yes, coffee table book.
This is I've been doing like straight to ballpoint stuff in the mornings, and this is a collection of just some of my straight to ballpoint like crazy stuff that I've been working on. So
we should all do that in the morning. Coffee and a ballpoint pen and paper.
I love it, man. I
Good
love
to
it.
start the day off with stuff.
It gets me loose and hyped up for the day.
Nice. So much more on that website too, from merch, some cool t-shirts, prints, some original drawings on there. I have to thumb through those as well. But Jim, thank you so much. Hopefully you won't be a stranger. You'll make it back to another Gen X Virtual Con. Thanks.
Anytime.
Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. From one huge fan, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. You did a great job, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it.